what motivated and inspired you to organize the event?
Okay, that's an easy question to answer. I was motivated and inspired by the dean who told me to do it. It was pretty simple. He said that they had contacted the Dalai Lama and that he was encouraged to come to Stanford campus for 2 or 3 events, that one of them would be a neuroscience conference and that I'd be leading the conference. And I said to him that maybe I didn't understand, because actually I wasn't a Buddhist, and I was a cell and molecular neuroscience person, not even a systems person. And he responded by saying, "You'll figure it out." And I did, but it wasn't easy. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and ultimately it really was very rewarding.
And what were you hoping to accomplish, and what challenges did you encounter putting on such an event?
Right, so the thing that made sense to me is that we would build an event that would bring the rigor of third-person observations that neuroscientists pursue with the really immense insight that comes from meditation that the Buddhists practice. So I thought here would be a chance to put together kind of hardcore, rigorous science with hardcore, rigorous contemplative practice and try to build bridges between the two. So allow neuroscientists to see what Buddhists do and vice versa, and essentially try to build bridges that, you know, would be able to be traveled over so we understand better what the mental experience is, and they understand better the limits of our neuroscience, what we can say and what we can do, and the great things that we can learn about at the levels of cells and molecules and circuits and even behavior.
And you asked whether neuroscience with its tools and concepts bring to Buddhism with its contemplative practice something useful and vice versa. What prompted you to ask this question? Why?
Yeah, I think because unless we have something to offer Buddhists and they have something to offer us, it won't work. So scientists always work on interesting problems. And they're just not going to waste their time on something that they don't think excites them and motivates them. And so we want to take what we know how to do and we want to apply it in a way that's interesting and exciting. But we've got to know that what we're up to is doable, is practical, that the data will be interpretable. And, you know, I think when it gets to first-person introspection, we're just not very good at that. I mean, we do it, but we don't do it with the same rigor that I think that we think the Buddhists probably do it. And at the very least, I suppose the goal with the neuroscientists was to say, what's there? What really can we learn? Now, getting ready for that required learning a lexicon and trying to share words and share concepts with the Buddhists. And so we had a number of telephone meetings before the conference to get people to agree to talk about some things, not other things. So for example, there was no way that we were going to talk about reincarnation because we don't have tools that measure that kind of thing, and you know, that would have been worthless to talk about that. I mean, not that it's not an interesting topic, but we're not going to be able to contribute significantly to reincarnation studies. On the other hand, understanding mental activity and the registration of mental activity in certain brain regions and trying to understand the nuances of how you test for that. Now that's something that was most interesting to both the neuroscientists and the Buddhists. The Dalai Lama said a couple of times, you know, where in the brain does one see changes when somebody is behaving compassionately? We couldn't answer his question. And he even said, you know, this experiment we showed was of people looking at loved ones that were in need. And we showed this particular part of the brain was more active. And he said, that's a foolish compassion, because of course when you see somebody in need and it's your own loved one, of course you have a response. But that probably isn't the same, it may not be the same place where the brain is active when one is acting out of compassion for an enemy. So, you know, he said, please image true compassion. In fact, he said to us over and over again, just measure something. Please help us understand the brain basis for our practices. Now, that may have been an attempt to have us validate Buddhist thoughts, and maybe that was true. But I had the sense in talking with him here, but also in Dharamsala, that he really wanted to understand the brain basis of what they do, and to really understand whether what they did was meaningful or not, whether it could be understood or not, whether it could be transmitted to other people. I had a couple conversations with Alan Wallace, and in those conversations I asked him, so why would Buddhists be interested in neuroscience? And his answer came to the following, that he thought Buddhism saw Western neuroscience as an enormously powerful tool to allow Buddhist practice to be respected and trusted in the West and used more effectively in the West. And I suspect that that might be true. We'll see. There's a long ways to go. I mean, we don't still really have that bridge built. There's much more that has to be done. But my guess is we made one of those early steps that was really necessary.
And what was it like meeting the Dalai Lama?
Nice guy. I like him. He's a nice man. He's a big guy, deep voice, and very sweet, and very smart. Doesn't waste time. Gets right to the heart of the matter. We had a very interesting talk with him in Dharamsala. We were with him for 2 hours there, and very thoughtful, jovial, laughs seemingly inappropriately sometimes. I mean, it's kind of surprising to people. But it was fun. And my guess, I mean, he's a very happy man. He inspires real confidence in the people around him. He's revered by his own people. And he has a spiritual essence that is unmistakable. So I liked him. I'd love to see him again. And I think it's very hard not to really be both entertained and informed by him.
And how do you think his views, his understanding, and his approach to scientific questions and issues compares to that of your colleagues?
Well, he's very logical. So I think he really does understand that we have tools that work to do some things, not other things. I think he thinks that the tools we have for modern neuroscience are good enough to start telling some stories and building some bridges. But I think he's quite realistic. He suggested a number of experiments when we were with him that were really good experiments. They're going to take a long time, but they were really quite reasonable experiments. And I think that he's got a very critical mind, and he's quite talented.
And I guess as a follow-up question to that, what do you feel are limitations to neuroscience that preclude us from a range of experience or understanding of the world that Buddhism may have access to?
I'm not sure there's anything that prevents us from knowing about that, but I'm not sure the tools are tuned for that kind of work right yet. We're building, I think, at several levels, the ability to understand the activity within neurons and neuronal circuits, and we're increasingly able to relate circuit function to behavior. But the most complex behavior is consciousness, and it is not trivial to understand the physical basis for any complex mental activity, with consciousness maybe at the very top of the list. So I don't think there's any lack of interest in that, but my guess is that tool making and conceptualizing is going to take a good deal of time and energy until we get to a point where we're able to either understand or predict first-person experiences of awareness, for example. Not just alertness, but awareness and self-awareness. I think it's going to take time. That's why I think working with Buddhists could be very helpful, because, for example, I'm told that they can, through training, adopt certain mental states and do so for very long periods of time. So that, for example, I was told by Jimpa, the Thupten Jimpa, who is the interpreter for the Dalai Lama, that there are certain Buddhist practitioners, not many, but certain ones, who can at will adopt a mental state that is precisely the same physiologically as that you experience when you suddenly feel a compassion for somebody laying alongside of the road, for example. That within seconds, their physiologic state and their mental state is exactly the same that you would feel spontaneously if you were confronted by such a person, which means not just that you recognize they're not well, not just that you recognize they're in danger, not just that you have nice feelings about them, but that you actually experience the need to reach out to support them, to care for them. And that the heart rate and the blood pressure and the pupillary dilatation, it's all there.
Yeah.
And they can hold on to that, I would guess, in some pain for them for very, very long periods of time. So if we knew that was true and could validate that through a variety of different measures, conceivably, we could image brain function that would be equivalent to or a marker for the state that is there when one is feeling compassion. Now it's a big hurdle, but imagine we could do that. It would really inform this sort of inductive approach that neuroscience likes to pursue.